Welcome to the Great Basin Spring and Fire Potential Outlook for April through July 2016. This is Gina McGuire. Over the next several minutes, we'll look at the recent weather conditions across the Great Basin, along with changes to El Nino as we go through the summer months, and the April through July weather and fire potential forecast. First, we'll look at the entire Great Basin, and we did combine, and this outlook will be for the entire Great Basin, where we have 29 predictive services areas, mainly across Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. Looking at the recent weather trend, the image on the left is temperatures during the month of March. We were definitely above normal in all areas of the West, including the Great Basin, and more significantly above normal as you move into southern areas of the Great Basin. The image on the right shows the precipitation through the month of March as a percent of average. Areas over the southern portion of the Great Basin in the bright red and white are well below normal with respect to precipitation over the last 30 days, and precipitation did increase as you move further north through the Great Basin, where areas of Idaho into the central Idaho mountains, the Snake River Plain, into southeast Idaho and Wyoming, and over parts of the Sierra into California were showing above normal precipitation. Looking at the overall water year precipitation dating back to October 1st, 2015, and you can see many areas of the Great Basin have seen near normal precipitation, with the exception of far southern Nevada and across much of Utah into southwest Wyoming. If we look at the snowpack, the image on the left was the snowpack at the beginning of March, and the image on the right is the snowpack at the end of March. Very little change. We have generally remained near to above normal with respect to snowpack in really all areas of the West as we move through this last month. However, if we look back to last year at this time, on March 31st, 2015, it's a drastic change from what we've been seeing this year. We had a very dry winter last year and well below normal snowpack across all of the West, including the Great Basin, where again this year we're near to above normal. If we look at the current drought conditions, despite the precipitation we have seen over the last several months and even into last fall and the end of last summer, we still have drought conditions across much of the Great Basin, most significantly over the western side of Nevada into the Sierra, where still extreme to exceptional drought continues. However, there has been an improvement, which I'll show on the next slide. Further east, generally abnormally dry or moderate drought conditions continue with some areas of severe drought into Utah. The image on the right shows the expectation as we move through the end of June, and drought conditions will likely persist across much of western and southern Nevada and may actually improve or be removed into parts of Utah and northern Nevada. Looking at the difference between last year at this time and this year, and you can see the drought has improved across all of the Great Basin, but it's going to take quite some time before this exceptional to extreme drought over parts of the western side of the Great Basin actually improves significantly, although we have seen that area of exceptional drought definitely decrease. Now we will look at the state of ENSO, looking at sea surface temperatures across the equatorial Pacific. When sea surface temperatures are much warmer than average for several months, we are in a state of El Nino, which we have been for the last couple of months. When they are much cooler than normal, we are in a state of La Nina. These show the transition over the last few months. The animation on the top portion of the page shows the current sea surface temperatures and also dates back to the beginning of January. In the beginning of the loop, you can see the much brighter reds and oranges over the equatorial Pacific, and then we see some cooling as we see more yellow and oranges, and some slight warming toward the end of the period in March just off the Central American coast. However, looking at the bottom animation, this shows the sea surface temperature anomalies, showing how far above normal these current temperatures are. If we look at the beginning of the animation, we saw lots of bright red, very dark red colors indicating these temperatures were well above normal, and as we've moved towards the end of March over the last few months, the sea surface temperature has cooled and also the relation to normal has dropped much further lower. Therefore, we're not as far above normal with respect to sea surface temperatures as we were back in January. And again, this indicates the weakening El Nino state that we will currently likely see continue throughout the spring and summer. Now that we've seen the current and past sea surface temperatures, El Nino did peak in the November, December, January time period, where those sea surface temperatures were well above normal. El Nino will continue to gradually weaken through the spring and likely into the summer, and even transition to neutral. However, precipitation increases will likely continue through April across the Great Basin. We may even see a return to La Nina later this year. The two other very strong El Nino periods that we have seen in the past were followed by neutral conditions and a return to some cooling of sea surface temperatures, either just below normal or it was a return of La Nina. The speed and the decline of El Nino is critical to the summer weather pattern across the West. if we see a rapid decline of sea surface temperatures, we'll likely see much more high pressure ridging across the west and warmer and drier conditions. However, if the transition from El Nino to neutral is gradual, we'll likely see more troughiness, bringing more precipitation and some wind to the area. Looking at the expectations as we go through the next 4 months from Predictive Services, the main thing to focus on are these 2 rows in the middle, which show the expected temperature and precipitation across the Great Basin and the country as a whole. Looking in the month of April, these blue area across the Great Basin indicates some cooler temperatures, along with some wetness across the southern and western half of the Great Basin. Wetter weather will likely continue into May, at least in parts of the Great Basin, more likely in the east, along with these cooler temperatures. However, as we move into June and July, the latter portion of the outlook, we do see a return of warmer and drier conditions. However, as we move into the middle of July, we'll likely see the monsoon increase and be most active, it looks like, this year over the eastern side of the Great Basin. Therefore, the west and northern areas may stay on the warmer and drier side. Therefore, taking all this into account, here are the Predictive Services outlooks for the next few months. We're expecting normal fire potential across the Great Basin, both through April and May. However, as we move into June and July, we'll likely see above normal fire potential return to the southern portion of the Great Basin, and by July, we'll likely see conditions increasing over western and northern areas. As the monsoon returns in the middle of July, we'll see a rapid decline in fire activity, most likely over the southern and eastern side of the Great Basin, but the warmer and drier period over the western and northern side of the Great Basin will likely continue. Here is a summary slide of everything we've talked about. Again, the transition from El Nino to neutral conditions will play a critical role in the summer weather pattern, and that will really determine how active the fire season is across the Great Basin. That's all we have for you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.